We are coming to you from Yankee Stadium in the Bronx for tonight. Comcast Sportsnet presents White Sox baseball. It's Jose Abreu, Todd Frazier, Brett Laurie and our Sox as they get set to butt heads with Joe Girardi's New York Yankees. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Ken Harrelson. My partner Steve Stone will not be here this weekend, but sitting in from MLB Network, thank them for allowing him to come, is a man who I've known for a long time. He's a big White Sox fan. He also was a three-time All-Star, spent 18 years pitching in the big leagues, one of the greatest left-handed relievers in the history of the game, Dan Plesac. And Dan, it's good to have you, buddy.
It is my pleasure to be part of the White Sox family for 3 days.
All right, you and I both were talking before the game. This is one of the toughest schedules I've ever seen, and you echoed that.
16 of the first 26 games on the road. They've kind of weathered the storm. Rough couple of last 2 games in Arlington. Now with the Yankees team that's starting to finally start to hit.
Well, Chris Sale on the bump, so that could negate a little bit of that. But Chris has won 7 in a row, going for 8 in a row.
Right now, this is a bold statement. I think he's the most improved pitcher in the game of baseball. He's a pitcher, no longer a thrower. You go back to his last start against the Twins, gave up 2 runs early on, settled down, shut them down, 7 innings, 9 strikeouts. He was terrific. He's learned how to pitch. He's no longer a thrower, and there's a reason why right now he is the best starting pitcher in the American League, and he's had a pretty good success against the Yankees. How about a 3-1 record with an ERA just over 1? The right guy at the right time to start a 3-game set.
Well, he's going to have to be, because the Yankees are just now starting to hit a couple of those guys.
Well, eventually, this team was going to hit. They're
right.
Built on power, and this is a ballpark that's conducive to hitting a lot of home runs. The 2 guys that really have started to hit, Carlos Beltran. One good thing that I like about this matchup, though, Hawk, we're going to switch Beltran around. Most of his power from the left side, he's going to have to hit from the right side, but he's a power threat. Starlin Castro, traded over this winter, former Chicago Cub. He's hit all season long. To me, he's the one bat in this lineup that Chris Sale is going to have to pay attention to, particularly with runners on base.
All righty, Todd Frazier is in that lineup, so sit back, relax, and strap it down. Dan Plesac on board as White Sox baseball coming your way.
Chicago is brought to you in part by Toyota. Discover more in a Toyota. Visit buyatoyota.com or your local Toyota dealer today. Let's go places. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Illinois. Through it all. Audi. Truth in engineering. And by Xfinity. Xfinity X1 will change the way you experience TV.
Back at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, where there was a little rain this afternoon. And they said they were right on the money, the forecasters. They said it was going to start around 3 and around 6:15. They got the tarp off the field. And, of course, Dan Plesac and I were talking a little bit earlier about old Yankee Stadium and all the tradition that was there. And certainly maybe 50 or 75 years from now, this stadium will have as much. But right now, it does not. But Yankees taking the field, Danny.
Well, this is the New York Yankees. Unfamiliar territory for the Yankees at the bottom of the American East. Let's take a look at the lineups first for Robin Ventura's first place White Sox. Those 23-12 Chicago White Sox. Adam Eaton, Jimmy Rollins, Jose Abreu, and Todd Frazier back in the lineup hitting fourth. Melky Cabrera, Brett Lawrie, Avisail Garcia has been raging lately. Alex Avila and Austin Jackson. The Yankees set up defensively like this, and it's really a good throwing outfield. Brett Gardner in left, Aaron Hicks, they're primarily their best arm in center field. Carlos Beltran, Chase Headley, Torres, Castro, Mark Teixeira, Austin Romine, and Luis Severino on the mound this evening for the Yankees. Take a look at this, our Lexus pitcher, Luis Severino, and our Lexus pursuing perfection starting pitcher is this guy right here, Luis Severino. It's been a rocky start for a guy that the Yankees thought was going to be their ace coming into the 2016 season. You see the high ERA over 6, 0-5 record hawk, and we had a chance to talk with David Cohn, who works for the Yes Network, and he says basically secondary pitches have failed him so far this year.
Well, you mentioned the outstanding ability and outstanding stuff he has. He's the kind of guy, he lost, 5 in a row, but he can run off 5 in a row just easy if he gets those secondary pitches over and throws some strikes. But he's coming up against the ball club right now with a lot of confidence. Chicago White Sox at this point, this is the most confidence I've seen one of our teams have in certainly the last 2 years and maybe the last 3 years. They're coming in, and Todd Frazier being back in that lineup with those stitches in his lip. His mom's calling him what?
Louis the Lip.
Yeah, Louis the Lip. Boy, she hung a monitor on him. Yeah, moniker. And let's check out our umpires. Behind the plate, Marty Foster, Mike Muchlinski at first base, Clint Fagan the second, and crew chief Mike Winters. He's over at third. So here at the stadium, 314 down the right field line, 318 down the left field line, 399 in deep left center, 408 in dead away center, and 385 in right center. There's Louis the Lip.
Feeling pretty good right now, isn't he?
Yeah.
Just do me a favor. Don't leave me up here alone. I was watching the other day when you went down to check on Todd Frazier. I have my small plane license. I can't drive a big aircraft like this Comcast Sportsnet plane. Just do me a favor. Stay seated, my friend.
Well, hopefully that won't happen again. But before we show you our picks to click, you at home select yours as Adam Eaton will lead it off. Sox come in hitting at .253 as a team with a 3.19 ERA. Sox won the first of that 3-game set down in Texas and then lost the last 2. So there's first pitch strike. Boy, you touched on it in the opening, and what an April and start to. He hits him. So the leadoff man aboard.
One of the things we also talked about, David Cohn, about the problems that Severino has had, and he said this Yankee staff in general has not done a very good job of pitching inside. So that pitch right there, that 0-1 fastball, maybe pitching coach Larry Rothschild saying, hey, we're going to have to move some people's feet around here. We're being too kind, too gentle. That fastball just getting that right arm there of Adam Eaton.
Well, one of the things that's always amazed me about baseball, and you being a pitcher for 18 years in the major leagues, is that walks usually score. Hit by pitches do not usually score. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. There's no rhyme or reason for it because they're both on base. Well, if you're going to pitch inside, you're going to hit some guys. Or in today's game, a better way to frame that, if you're going to pitch inside today, the guys are going to hit themselves. Jimmy Rollins hitting at .247.
And I think if you're Adam Eaton right now, one way you want to try to get back at Luis Severino, you get hit by a pitch, a guy that can run. There's nothing better that makes you feel better than go ahead and steal a bag and get into scoring position here for Jimmy Rollins.
Ground ball. Steps on the bag. Just looks the second. So 1 out. And with one out, let's check out our picks to click tonight. Jim Angio, our director and the crew, went with Austin Jackson. Dan and Steve are going to go with Jimmy Rollins. And Roy Rivas, who takes care of us back in his staff, his tremendous staff, back at U.S. Cellular Field. We're going to go with Alex Avila. And here is Abreu. That sweeper misses. Yeah, this kid's got it. I saw him when I believe he first came up last year, one of his first starts. He has got, I watch the hitters, I don't watch the ball. You can tell a lot by watching the hitters. And you could tell what kind of stuff he had just by watching the reactions of those guys.
The Yankees really thought they had something. They've been known in the Brian Cashman era of moving their younger players, their premier players, and Luis Severino, Hawk, has been the main guy in their system for the last 4 or 5 years, and a lot of people thought that maybe they would move him last year to try to bring in something to get this team over the hump, but too valuable arm. His stuff doesn't equate to an 0-5 record with an ERA over 6.
Not at all.
But there's a prime example right there. You fall behind Jose Abreu, you have a runner in scoring position, inability to command the secondary pitches. 1-0 breaking ball misses, 2-0 breaking ball not even close. Right now, if you're Jose Abreu, you're locked in one pitch. Look for that fastball. If you get it, go ahead and turn it loose.
We don't have much of a 3-0 offense, which is somewhat surprising. Maybe as the season goes on and Robin gets to know the new guys a little better, first thing the manager has to know about a 3-0 offense is who can hit 3-0 and who can't hit 3-0. Some guys think that 3-0 hit sign is the 3-0 swing sign.
I think that has impressed me the most about watching Abreu. He's not afraid to let the ball get deep, and he's not afraid to hit with 2 strikes. And to me, that's a dangerous combo. You know about the power, but I think the most impressive thing to me is he fights off good pitching and pitches, and he will rifle the ball to right field. And that's what makes him a complete hitter.
He sees something. Last year, he was the best bad pitch hitter in Major League Baseball because he had to be. He had no protection whatsoever behind him for the last 2 years, the first 2 years of his career, and he still hit 30 and drove in 100. He's got some now, though, in that guy right there. So look for Abreu to have a big season. He does let the ball get deep on him.
Well, if you're Severino right now, that was another to show you the respect that they have for a guy like Abreu. They've gone consecutive hard breaking balls in a 3-ball 2-strike count with a base open at first base, and you're kind of flirting with danger if you're Abreu right now. And I think right now if he puts something in that middle of the plate, he's going to square this up. Looking for the breaking ball.
Yeah. 2 down.
There's the replay of it right here. Obviously, this is inner third, 95 miles an hour, good pitch, but you can tell by this, Hawk, you can see it catches that inner edge. Had to be sitting on something hard away, that hard slider that he saw the pitch before.
Well, he's done that a lot because everybody has been trying to get him to chase that breaking ball, and he has chased it way too much. He's not even close to being where he's going to be. So here is Frazier. 11 homers, 31 knocked in. He is one tough man.
See if we can get a close up there. Look at that lip. Louis the Lip, his mom was calling him, right?
Yeah. There you see the bottom lip. Breaking ball.
You see Romine coming out here. That might have been a cross up. Wanted to make sure with a young pitcher you have Adam Eaton on second base and might be relaying signs, and you see that often with the young pitcher, particularly early in the game. You see where Romine's setting up. He's setting up away, and there's almost a double cross, one of those back up, those front door breaking balls, not intended to be where it was located.
Two and one with Melky on deck. No score, top of the first. If you're just tuning in, first of 3 against the Yankees here in the Bronx. So 2 balls, 2 strikes. Headley back and well off the line at third.
Be interesting to see what he went here. The sequence, the last at bat to Abreu, he was really comfortable going to the hard slider. Finished Abreu off with a fastball in. He shook Romine off.
Well, that
3
might
times.
be one reason he's 0-5 too.
You know, as we touched on earlier, Hawk, talking with David Cohn, one of the problems Severino's had, he seems more comfortable right now throwing his slider than he does his fastball.
And that pitch going away. So a full count with 2 down. Well, youngsters, when they come up, unless they're 5-0, if you're 0-5, you shouldn't be shaking off that catcher that much. Yanks that one foul. Well, the Yankees, one of the teams in the American League, and especially when they play the Red Sox, some of the slowest games, taking sometimes 40, 45, 50 seconds in between pitches. And that's ball 4.
Pretty good at bat there by Todd Frazier, laying off that 3-2 breaking ball. And we've kind of been to what the script has been with Severino. He wants to go to the off-speed pitches, Hawk, but he doesn't have very good command of those. And now he's painted himself into a corner here with Melky Cabrera.
Melky hitting a .308, a couple of homers. He's driven in 13. Melky has faced Severino 3 times, has 1 hit, and that was a double. Yeah, here's a young 22-year-old hard-throwing right-handers. First inning is a breaking ball pitcher.
That's what he's turned it out to be. And there's another, Michael Pineda, also on this staff, has turned into a slider after slider after slider machine.
One and 1 to count. Adam Eaton at second. Todd Frazier at first. 2 down. Back through the middle. Knocked down. And can they get him? Yes. What a play. Boy, what a play by Ronald Torres. Mercy saves a run, and that'll retire the side. So he threatened, can't score after happening to play. It's their guys, nothing, and their guys coming to bat.
Yankees, Aaron Hicks, former Cubs, Starlin Castro, Carlos Beltran sitting on 399 career home runs, Mark Teixeira, Chase Headley off the slow starts, Gary Sanchez, Brett Gardner, Austin Romine, and that slick fielding shortstop who made that last play, Ronald Torreyes. Defensively for the White Sox, best defensive outfield in the game right now. Melky Cabrera, Austin Jackson, Adam Eaton, Todd Frazier, Jimmy Rollins, Brett Lawrie, Jose Abreu, and Alex Avila behind the plate. And there he is, our Lexus pursuing perfection starting pitcher, the one and only Chris Sale. Right now, the best pitcher in the American League. 7-0, ERA 1.79. Right guy to have at the right time in the Bronx.
One of 4 switch hitters in this Yankee lineup. Aaron Hicks hitting at 200, couple of homers he's driven in 7. Well, you just said something there. It's music to all our ears. Is that White Sox outfield, one of the best, if not the best, defensive outfield in all of baseball. And I've never seen a guy, one guy come in. I have offensively and change the dynamic of the whole lineup. But I've never seen a guy come in to the degree and change the whole dynamic of the defense in the outfield like Austin Jackson has. So that's by Jimmy Rollins.
Right here, Chris Sale, fastball, inner third. Just gets this one under the glove of Jimmy Rollins at first base. And I think this is one of the things that has taken Chris Sale up to that next level. In my opinion, this is a bold statement, Hawk, but I think he's the most improved pitcher in the game of baseball from 2015 to 2016. He's a pitcher, no longer a thrower. He's not maximum effort on every pitch, controls the running game. He's figured this game out in a short period of time.
He certainly has the pitching acumen. And you're right, when he first came in, although, as I mentioned, still to this day, I've seen him so many impressive times out there on the mound. But the game that impressed me the most is when he pitched that game against, a few years ago down in Texas, against a good hitting ball club. Never hit 90 one time and just beat them. That was impressive. Off the end of the bat.
It's been so impressive to watch. Like Starlin Castro, pretty good hitter. He makes real good hitters look bad. And I think a lot of this, we're going to take a look at this again. I mean, this is you just can't teach what he's able to do. He'll run the ball in, and like this here, he'll take a little bit off. He's not afraid, to throw 89 to 92 miles an hour. He has that 94, 95 in the tank if he needs it. And to me, what has separated him now, he changes speeds with that curveball. It's not a true curveball or slider. I call it more of a slurve, but he'll throw it 78. He'll throw it 83 miles an hour. And he's figured out, and he trusts it. And in my opinion, what makes him the most difficult to hit, he throws to both sides of the plate. You have to cover both sides. And if you're a righty, he's not afraid to run the ball in, and that's what makes him doubly tough.
Well, he's finally figured out sometimes that less is better. And as you mentioned when we were talking about it on the bus, some guys never find that out. Or it takes some guys years and years and years to find out that sometimes less is better.
Well, when you just
softer is better.
Just by that shot right there, great shot from the truck. He's just so calm and relaxed, and his body language is a guy that he's figured it out.
Well, somebody's going to have that presence. It's either going to be the pitcher or the hitter, but one of the two of them is going to have it. There's Beltran, 39-year-old veteran. Last year hit 276, 19 homers, and drove in 67. Bit of a gap out there in left center. And no score, bottom of the first, if you're just tuning in. Sitting in for Steve Stone, MLB analyst, one of the best in the business, Dan Plesac.
There it is.
He gone.
96 when he needs it. lulls you to sleep with that slow breaking ball. And this is when you have it in your back pocket and you wait to unleash it. 96 right by Beltran. What sets that up? The 91 away, the sweeping breaking ball the pitch before, and just boom, middle.
Well, that's the best way in the world to add speed to that fastball. It looks like more than 96. It looks more closer to 98 to the eye of the hitter. Here's Teixeira hitting at 194, 3 homers. He's driven in 11. Hicks, Beltran, Teixeira, and Headley, all switch hitters.
If Chris could continue the rest of the night, Hawk, to keep that ball on the outer third with his fastball, he's going to be awfully tough to deal with. Because these Yankee hitters, particularly Teixeira, when you flip him around to the right side, he's a middle of the plate in hitter. He likes the ball coming towards him and in. And if you can make him aware of that fastball away like he did on the first pitch, you take that little bit of aggressiveness out, and it just opens up the entire plate if you're Chris Sale.
Two and one.
Tried the backdoor slider, which that's another pitch that he's brought into his arsenal. That you throw that big sweeping breaking ball that a lot of right-handed hitters will give up because the appearances that ball is going to be way out of the strike zone. You can see he was a little disgusted with himself, wanted to try to get that pitch into the strike zone.
And the count 3-1. Well, when you can throw a backdoor slider and then you can throw the slider down and in, all of a sudden that hitter is not hitting to a 17-inch plate. He's hitting to more like a 25 or 30-inch plate.
Now the guy on deck, you're taking a look at Chase Headley last night. His first extra base hit of the season. It took him 91 at bat. So if you're Chris Sale right here, this isn't the time. If you there's not really a great time for a walk, but
Adam Eaton with a nice recovery. Looked like he misread it, took a little funny route, but he got there, and that'll retire the side.
Adam Eaton with our Xfinity high-speed action replay. This bullet off the bat of Mark Teixeira breaks in a little bit, but corrals it down in a big third out for Chris Sale and keeps this thing at 0-0 going to the top of the second.
Brett Laurie, Avi Garcia, and Alex Avila. Oh, what a nice play. What a nice recovery that was.
Getting back to what you touched on. Having Austin Jackson in center field, and now you have an athletic guy that can throw. And I don't think at times Adam Eaton gets enough credit for, one, how strong he throws, and two, how accurate. He's accurate and a strong thrower.
Well, he does with our fans, but not so much anybody else. He's good out there. There's a good pass at that pitch down into the right field corner. So Brett picks up his 10th two-bagger.
Look at this right here. Gets this slider, another breaking ball from Severino, and he laces this one down into corner. And Carlos Beltran does a good job getting to this, but makes it in pretty easy. I kind of like the high step in Brett Lowry when he got halfway between first and second. Hawk, he was like one of those thoroughbred horses. He was high knee running.
He's fun to watch. Put a little Walter Payton on him right there. All right, let's do something. Avi, shove it to the right side, buddy.
Yeah, we were talking about Avisail Garcia before the game, Hawk, and it was a disappointing 2015, but you were saying the last week to 10 days, he's starting to show signs of being that guy.
Well, he had an 11-game hitting streak snapped on Wednesday, and we talked about it. You know, talent-wise, he's the most talented player on this club. He's still a baby yet. He's still very young. And if he can get it in his head that he has to work on his approach rather than the mechanics, then he's got a chance to be something. As strong as he is, as big as he is, as fast as he is.
For the MLB Network, we do the 30 teams in 30 days, and I had a great talk with Kenny Williams about Avisail Garcia last year, and he really thought that this guy was a 30 home run, 100 RBI kind of guy. He thought he was a middle of the order producer. Didn't happen in 2015, and he's showing signs of being that guy again right now, and that would be a big boost to this lineup.
Well, he's that kind of talent. And you put him in the outfield. Sometimes he's a little rough around the edges, but he can throw, and he is accurate.
You know, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but when you watch him in the box, he has a lot of the mannerisms of Miguel Cabrera, and he's yet to to hit like Miggy.
Good job by Aaron Hicks getting over there and making a good quick throw, hit the cutoff man.
That is the one outfielder in the Yankees outfield right now that can throw. Aaron Hicks has a terrific arm, by far the strongest arm. So if the White Sox are going to get something going, that's not the guy you want to hit it to in center field. He throws like a right fielder that plays center field.
There's Alex Avila. Alex hitting at 219. Good time to pick up your first RBI. That was a good at bat by Avi. It's a bullet out there to the right side. Unfortunately, just hung up too long.
And that's one of those when you're sitting on the bench or sitting up here, all you want to see is the effort to try to hit that ball to the right side.
Conversely, get in that situation, you go up there, you hit the first pitch, one hopper to the third baseman. You get back to that dugout, nobody's going to say anything to you.
No shaking hands. Nobody looks at you. No eye contact.
They're saying something under their breath. 1-1 to count.
You can see a lot of indecision right now between Romine and Severino. We saw it in the first inning. Repeatedly stepping off several sequence of signs.
I'm loving it from our standpoint. Breaking ball strike.
You can see Alex right now. Look, wait a minute here. You have Austin Romine was sitting out on the outer third expecting a breaking ball away, and that ball cut across the inner third of the plate. I could understand why he was a little bit upset.
That's off the plate. 2-2. You mentioned David Cone, who was in earlier. We were talking. When you got guys like him, you got guys like Drysdale, you get guys like Gibson. Well, when you step in that box, these guys, is that ball here well into left center field, and nobody's going to get it. So here comes Brett. He'll score on the double by Alex, and it's a 1-0 Sox lead. Roy Rivas and his crew, they're picked to click.
How about Brett Lawrie? Little double trouble here. This is our White Sox E-click with this replay. Alex Avila drives this one in the gap here in left center field. Splits Brett Gardner. Rolls all the way to the wall. Brett Lawrie scores easily. And with his first White Sox run, E-clip Lending will donate $100 to the Pat Tillman Foundation, supporting military veterans and their families.
Don't stop now, boys. Take him up, Austin. When Avila is hitting the ball hard to left and left center, he's dangerous. Boy, when he was in that Tiger uniform, that's how he really hurt us. Outfield slightly to the right. And the count moves to 3-0.
That's a pitch right there if you're Luis Severino. You're not going to get those close calls. A lot of breaking balls out of the zone. If you're throwing strikes that last pitch, you might get that call to strike, but he's going to have to bring it in the zone. That's one of those fastballs right there. His stuff is too good, Hawk. When you watch him, he's going to get a meeting right here with Larry Rothschild, pitching coach. And you see this happen. When you're 0-5 and you're a young pitcher and your ERA is north of 6, you're searching for answers. And a lot of times, the answer is you're afraid to attack the strike zone. And I am 100% committed that most pitchers, when they go into these bad funks, and he's in one of these right now, you stop trusting your stuff. You find yourself 2-0, 3-0, and trying to beat a trick pitcher where this guy throws 95.
Well, it tells me that mirror just doesn't like what it's seeing. And when you are afraid of contact, pitching to contact, you got a big problem. You might get away with it sometimes in the minor leagues, but in the major leagues, when you're afraid of that bat, you got a big problem. Here's Adam. He was hit leading off the ball game.
And it seems like, as we talked with David Cone, it seems like tonight, Hawk, he's more comfortable throwing his off-speed pitches. That first pitch to Adam Eaton, that hard slurve, backdoor type of slider. And there's a good fastball. He has a good fastball. And getting back, we were talking on the bus about so much of it a mindset, and I think whether you're a starting pitcher or a relief pitcher, you have to make up your mind when you walk from that bullpen. You're going to be the hunter or the hunted. You're going to go out and you're going to go after people, and you're going to hunt the strike zone and not be afraid of the strike zone. And if you go out there tentative and timid, that guy you're looking at on your screen right now, he's figured it out. But there is nothing timid about Chris Sale, and that's why he's 7-0 and he's the best pitcher in the American League.
Well,
he's not afraid of bats.
Well, a lot of pitchers don't understand what presence means. The presence to the hitters. When you have a presence out there, as there's a little chopper, Headley comes on. Now does not have a play, so that'll load him up.
This is a pretty good pitch right here from Severino. Jam shot. Headley really not much he could do with this one. A little bit of a wet ground. We had rain here most of the day. Instead of air milling that and throwing that one, he just puts it in his pocket. And boy, this is time for my pick to click right now. Jimmy Rollins.
We're all pulling for your pick to click. As he caught a break right there. But as Dan said, when you're not throwing strikes, the close ones you're not going to get. Pulled off that pitch, and the count evens at 1.
That's a pretty good hard slider there. That's more of a true slider. When you're throwing a 92-mile-an-hour breaking ball, that's not a curveball.
I was talking with Matt and Ryan and Mark this morning over at the studio, and we were talking about pitchers and hitters and that vibe that goes back and forth. It's there. And when those good ones get out there on that mound, they are staring you right in the face. They're looking at you right in the eyes. Like, get your behind in there and let's get it on. Other times you see guys walking around timid like. That just enhances the chances of that hitter being more dangerous.
Best fastball he's thrown so far. 3-1 count, 97-mile-an-hour fastball from Luis Severino. You could see now why Joe Girardi and Larry Rothschild, they're so frustrated because they know what this guy's capable of, and he's just not attacking the zone.
Got him right there, and that'll bring up Abreu.
Back-to-back 97-mile-an-hour fastballs. He saved the best for Jimmy Rollins. There's no doubt about it. Those last two fastballs, you hear that term, throwing a pitch with conviction. Those last two fastballs had some angry on him right there. 97 definitely strikes upper part of the zone.
This will be the 48th pitch he's thrown already. And there's a shot base hit. They won't get that one. That's going to score. Pair. Adam on his way to third base. He'll get there. And it's a 3-0 Sox lead. Yes.
Oh, and with Chris Sale on the mound so far, 7-0 on the year. If you're the White Sox right now, you have to feel really good about this. Would have been, you felt like a missed opportunity for the White Sox after the Rollins strikeout. First pitch, Abreu hits a bullet right back through the middle. And just like that, the White Sox are in business. This is a bullet. Scoring 2. Good base running there by Austin Jackson. That's what he's paid to do, driving runs, and he does it well.
Here's Todd. He walked last inning. This year's been it's been a different ball game as far as continuation offense, continuation hitting. They just keep things going.
If you're Joe Girardi, this is not what you want to see. You just come off a tough 4-game series with the Royals where they had to empty the bullpen out the last 3 days. They need some innings out of Severino. Good take there by Frazier.
Yeah, it was. Well,
now you've got a young pitcher. He's talking to himself now. Made a pretty good pitch, 2-1. Todd Frazier, who's known as an aggressive hitter. Tough take. Now you're really in the hole.
And that is another walk, and that will load him up again.
Hey, a White Sox group outing is a perfect way to entertain clients, promote teamwork, or boost morale. Your group will enjoy special group benefits when you reserve 20 or more seats. The larger the group, the larger the discount.
Here's Melky. He was robbed of an RBI single last inning on a beautiful play by the shortstop Harold Torres. And if you miss that play, poof. Ball's hit hard.
Boy, this was a bullet right here. With this new day and age in all of the shifting right there. What are the benefits? Moving that shortstop behind the second base bag in a terrific play.
Well, you know, people forget about it, even before when you first came into the big leagues. Whitey Herzog was doing that way back then. He was forerunner of team shifts, so to speak. They always had individual shifts for guys like Ted Williams and some of the other people. But they're having team shifts now, and Whitey was the one who brought that to fore and did pretty well with it. There's a little chopper 2 hopper, but some damage is done. A crooked number goes up on that board, and we'll go to the bottom of the second, leading 3-0. And a reminder, considered one of baseball's unluckiest pitchers due to his previous lack of run support, Jose Quintana is turning his luck around this year. And thanks to the help of his teammates, Chuck Garfien has the story tomorrow on White Sox Pregame Live, presented by the Koalas family of dealerships. That's at 11:30 on CSN. Chris Sale concluding his warm-up tosses here in the bottom of the second inning. He has a 3-0 lead.
Beautiful night in the Bronx, Hawk.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
a little dreary this afternoon. We came in on the bus. It was raining. We were wondering if we were going to get this one in.
Yeah. Forecasters were right on the money.
It's always nice when you have a 3-0 lead, too. The weather's better with Chris Sale, too, right?
Oh, baby. Yes, indeedy. So here's Chase Headley hitting at 194, a homer. He's driven in 6.
We talked about the Yankees offense up until the last week sputtering. Last night, Chase Headley hit a 2-run home run. It was his first extra base hit of the season. 91 at bats it took Headley to get his first extra base hit.
That's hard to believe. But right there, it's now a 3-1 game.
Well, on our forward home run replay, let's get a look at it right here. Fastball, inner third, a little bit down. Headley keeps his hands in. You can see he barrels this up right here. And with one swing, the Yankees on the board. Cuts the lead to 3-1 White Sox.
There's the 23-year-old DH for him, Gary Sanchez. He's a .274 minor league career hitter. Yeah, Headley did a good job of hitting that ball with short arms. You extend on that same pitch in the location on the inside corner, and you're going to hit it hard, but you're going to hit it foul.
You know, we were asking some Yankee people why Gary Sanchez with Chris Sale on the mound, Brian McCann, their left-handed hitting catcher. They decided they want to call up what they thought in their minor league system at this time right now was their best right-handed bat, and that's why you're seeing Gary Sanchez in the lineup.
That ball going to get foul. It will. Joe Girardi. He has turned into one solid manager. Boy, he won a couple of years there. He was running some, you know what out there.
And doing it in a tough town to continue to do it,
yeah,
and do it well. You know, in some ways, that solo home run by Chase Headley, I don't want to say kind of a wake-up call, but to somebody like Chris Sale right now, that might just like, okay, you know, look at that breaker.
Here you go.
Can't hit that. This is a near impossible pitch. You can see Sanchez, he's giving up on this all the way. Starts out almost in the left-handed hitter's batter's box, comes back in on the inner third. He has a lot of weapons, and he's not afraid to use them at any time.
Well, that point that you were bringing up right there about waking up, so to speak, that happens a lot in this game. A lot. In fact, there are some guys that go out there and they pitch better once somebody takes them deep. They don't, not so much on a continuation basis of 2 or 3 or 4 hits, but when somebody takes them deep, yeah, it sort of rings their bell. Here's Gardner. And Melky coming on, can't get there. That's the Kansas City special.
Not much you can do to defend that right there. Melky was already in and shaded towards the left field line. This is one of those fastballs that just gets in enough. Intended to be away. It beats Gardner in. He has just enough. You can watch this swing right here, and he kind of fisted towards left field. Cabrera was in, hit it right in the perfect spot.
Austin Romine, the catcher, hitting at .333. No homers. He's driven in 3.
And with Jacoby Ellsbury on the disabled list right now for the Yankees, they don't have much as far as the running game, but the guy at first base, Brett Gardner, I wouldn't consider him a burner, but he's the lone threat in this Yankee lineup to steal a base. So if you're Chris Sale right now, pay attention to him over at first.
He stole 20 last year. That ball hit hard, but we got a man there. Looks like it started to knuckle a little bit. 2 down.
You know, you hear center fielders often talk about one of these, that one hit right at it. You can see Austin Jackson. He had a beat on that right from the beginning. You touched on it, Hawk. That had a little that knuckle action. Good job, right man in the right spot.
Here's Harold Torres. Youngster hitting at .313. And that's high in the right field. Can of corn for Adam Eaton right at the edge of the track, and that'll retire the side, but they get the leadoff homer. Chase Headley. It is a 3-1 Sox lead. Hayes all season long on CSNChicago.com, presented by The Great Escape. Pools, patio furniture, hot tubs, and more. Escape your everyday. Shop The Great Escape. It'll be Laurie, Garcia, and Avila. Brett started off that 3-run second with a double.
It's been a rough 2 innings for Luis Severino. That was his 57th pitch.
Yeah, they're going to get in that pen. They're
right.
going to see a lot of work tonight.
If you're Joe Girardi right now and you're looking for innings, this is not the start he wanted to get from his starter. Pitch total is up, and I think you know as well as everybody the secret to this team to beating the Yankees is have the lead by the 6th inning. Stay away from Betances, Miller, and Aroldis Chapman.
For a lot of teams, this certainly has become a 6-inning game.
Look at what the Kansas City Royals have done the last couple of years, with Wade Davis making the move from the rotation to the bullpen. Some think he might be the best 9th inning pitcher in the game of baseball.
Jammed himself right there. And it's out number 1.
All right, Sox fans, join us as we welcome back White Sox Greats on homecoming weekend, Friday, May 20th to the 22nd, when the Royals come in town to battle the White Sox. Homecoming weekend is presented by the Village of Bedford Park. Bring your business home to Bedford Park and win big. To purchase tickets, visit whitesox.com.
And that is out of play right side. Avi with Laurie on second base and nobody out last inning. Had a good at bat. Hit it hard to the right side, but it stayed in the air. A line drive out. Darren Hicks. That's a nice play. Nice snap right there. 2 down.
It seems like a much more under control Luis Severino, as we touched on it going in. Took him 56 pitches to get through the first 2 innings. Good breaking ball off the end of the bat right here, and does a nice job. It's always easier when that ground ball is hit to your glove side coming off that mound, but a nice play there by Luis Severino.
Here's Alex. Drove a ball deep into left center field for an RBI double. Takes first pitch strike.
Yeah, we had a shot there of the Yankees. They shift more than any team in baseball, and you just wonder, you take a look at this and how much real estate from shortstop to that third base line. You just wonder, Hawk, when hitters are going to start to accept the fact that there are a lot of hits towards that opposite direction.
You're preaching to the choir here. I've been saying that a long time. I just, even for pull hitters, I mean, if you got to take what they're going to give you, and all you got to do is just get it past the pitcher, and it's a base hit.
You know, the one guy that comes to mind throughout the league, you watch David Ortiz, that repeatedly hit into the shift, but the last year or two he's starting to take that. If you're going to give me that shortstop side towards third base bag, not afraid to hit the ball the other way on the ground.
And Danny, especially in close ball games, as there is a base hit in the left field. So Vila 2 for 2.
You know, two Yankee hitters in particular. Mark Teixeira, he's been reluctant to try to hit the ball the other way when he's hitting left-handed, to try to take advantage of that short porch. And their catcher, Brian McCann, there's a good look at Teixeira right there. If your teams are going to repeatedly stack that right side and you're just going to continue to hit bullets on the ground, it's almost shame on you.
Sure it is, especially in close ball games. In close ball games, and besides that, at the end of the season, if you do it enough, first of all, you're going, as you just referred, you're going to do it enough, you're going to stop that shift to be that drastic. Plus, you're going to put a lot of points on your average. And you're going to score a lot more runs. You do that 15 times, that's 30 points.
Do you think that that's just the style that hitting coaches have taught in the minor leagues for the last few years, that the hitters are reluctant to make changes?
I don't know. I just know there are a lot of hitters that come up that really struggle when they first get up here. They really struggle. When you have guys, and again, getting back to close ball games, in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning in a 1 or a 2 run ball game, to try to hit it through that shift. The name of the game is keeping pressure on the pitcher and on the other team. I guarantee you do that to the Kansas City club and they're going to run you right out of the ballpark.
You know, getting back to the Royals, win the World Championship last year in 2015, and they've kind of gone against the sabermetric thinking, like an out is an out. Put the ball in play, cut down the strikeouts. You saw the pressure they put in the Mets in the World Series last year, and I think there's something to that, Hawk. That I thought there for a while that the sabermetric community looked at, well, a strikeout. There's nothing productive, in my opinion, with a strikeout.
Kansas City struck out over 200 times fewer last year than any other team in Major League Baseball. And again, the name of the game is putting pressure and keeping pressure on that pitcher and the other team. And when you get guys on base, anything can happen, as there is ball 4.
And I get it. You know, Jose Abreu, Todd Frazier, your 3, 4, and 5 guys, they're going to strike out, because what comes with the 30 home runs and the 100 runs batted in, you're going to have to live with some swings and misses. But I think if you look up and down, and one of the reasons the White Sox find themselves in first place right now, you look up and down this lineup, Todd Frazier starting to hit. You've touched on it. They keep the line moving. And you're consistently putting pressure. Luis Severino, he's at 74 pitches right now. And what Larry Rothschild can possibly tell him, the White Sox are making him throw strikes. And when he has to bring the ball into the zone, Jose Abreu had that bullet to drive in 2 runs in the 2nd inning. And you continue to put yourself in a spot where pitchers are thrown with runners on base in scoring position, and a young pitcher like Severino, yeah, there's one pitch away from blowing this game wide open.
Several times. As here is Adam. Adam was hit by a pitch and then had an infield single. Well, Kansas City, make no mistake about it, until somebody dethrones them, they are still the guys you got to watch out for in the Central, until somebody knocks them off the throne, because they have come within 1 out of winning 2 consecutive World Championships.
Their bullpen the last 3 years has been the envy of everybody in baseball. And baseball, like football and major sports, it's kind of a copycat league. So teams started to try to win. The winning formula was, hey, let's build from the back of the bullpen towards the 6th or 7th inning.
That ball hit hard in the center field. Hicks going back. He can't get there. He did not read it very well, and that's going to score a pair. And that's what getting guys on base will do for you. And it's a 5-1 Sox lead.
Just what we had touched on. One big swing right there. Adam Eaton, bullet to straightaway center field. If you're Luis Severino, right here, little backdoor breaking ball that he stays on. Take a look. It's well balanced. See his head down right through the ball. Hicks initially breaks in. Bullet hit over his head. Big 2-run RBI double for Adam Eaton.
And here's Rollins. Jimmy 0 for 2. He's grounded to first, and he has struck out. Checks it up and fouls it away. Yeah, when you put the ball in play and keep it, that's the reason that Kansas City will get more infield hits. They'll get more little flares, little duck snorts than any team in the American League. Meanwhile, they're on base and they score.
I think we both agree on this. What's the winning method? You know, a lot was made of the money ball with Billy Beane, and it's about getting on base percentage. But I still believe this. Without Zito, Mulder, and Hudson, that money ball, you have to have the pitching first and foremost.
Well, you know, you just mentioned 3 guys that were never mentioned in that movie. Not one time. Not one time were they mentioned in that movie. And when you had those 3 guys, there's 60 wins right there.
I mean, you go back to 2005 when the White Sox win it all. You look at that starting rotation and how good for a span. Jose Contreras, you can make the case he was the best pitcher in baseball for 3/4 of a season. You have Mark Burley, and you have a bullpen that was lights out. And it starts and stops with your pitching. And this is the problem the Yankees have run into. Their starting pitching, they were banking on CC Sabathia, being CC Sabathia of old. He's gotten off to a rotten start. Severino, tonight's starter for the Yankees, unquestionably, he has their best stuff. And if you're Joe Girardi and you're the Yankees right now, you have to be thinking about, is it maybe time to send Severino down to the minor leagues to try to figure this out? Are you doing more damage leaving him up here, having to fight through a lineup like this that he's not fooling anybody right now?
That ball hit way back. Beltran, stay fair. Looks up, you can. Put it on the board. Yes! A 2-run homer, and it is 7-1.
Well, let's take a look at the Ford home run replay from Jay Smooth, as they call him out on the West Coast, Jimmy Rawlings. How about this little guy having flashbacks to his MVP year with the Philadelphia Phillies. This one a no-doubter.
And here's Abreu. He had a big 2-run hit in the 2nd inning. Another thing's not talked about enough either is that most of the time is here comes Girardi. Now they're going to see if anything's wrong with Severino to get somebody ready in that bullpen. But most of the time guys just love to hit much more off pitchers, especially good stuff pitchers, from the stretch than they do from the windup.
Well, when you consistently, you take a look at Melky Cabrera right now, taking a look at Joe Girardi, the training staff out. When you're consistently pitching behind an account, and it looks like it's going to be it for Severino, it's tough. Now, he blew Jimmy Rollins away his last at bat. 2 97-mile-an-hour fastballs on a 3-1 and a 3-2 count, but he wasn't getting by him this time.
All right. Severino departs. Nick Goody comes on, and we'll be back.
Minus called to the pen. Joe Girardi bringing in right-handed Nick Goody. This will be his 5th appearance of the 2016 campaign. No record, Pretty good ERA of 1.93. 4 2/3, 6 innings, 1 walk, and 8 strikeouts. Having to go to that bullpen early. This is not what Joe Girardi and the Yankees had in mind in game 1 of this 3-game set against the White Sox.
81 pitches for Severino. And, of course, with that home run by Rollins, Alex Snellius, another generous donation to White Sox charities in loving memory of Ursula. First pitch strike. Check that. Ball 1. And it's 2-0 now. First pitch thrown by Goody. Oh, he had a hack. Looking for it, got it, and just underneath it.
It's a pretty good pitch to hit right here. Fastball, inner third, a little up. I wouldn't throw that one again if I were Nick Goody.
We've seen him hit that pitch a long way, a few times.
Went to the slider, 82-mile-an-hour slider. You know, getting back to Luis Severino, there's Jimmy Rollins. Big home run. At MLB Network, we do the 30 teams in 30 days. And I'll say this, Hawk, what a difference between the 2015 spring training camp of the White Sox. And one of the big reasons I think Jimmy Rollins, there's a lot of good baseball left in Jimmy Rollins. He brings some energy, he brings some passion. Along with Todd Frazier, it's amazing how 2 guys, there he is, the infectious smile. I played with him in the Philadelphia Phillies my last year in 2003. Todd Frazier, another one. Those kind of personalities, and I know a lot of times we don't give enough credit to team chemistry, but I do think there's something to that. I really do. When guys get along, and this was my first time when I walked in the clubhouse this morning after we came in on the bus. There's something good going on here right now.
Yeah.
It's a group of guys that get along, from Robin Ventura, the coaches. Now that goes hand in hand when you're in first place and you're playing well like the White Sox are, but a different feel, and I felt that in March when I was at their camp, spent the day at Camelback Ranch. Different team.
It is entirely different in that respect, and also as that's the final out, but some damage is done. That continuation hitting picks up 4. We go to the bottom of the 3rd, leading 7-1. Fire continue their road trip and try to gain ground in the standings as they face the New England Revolution. Coverage starts at 7 and 6 on CSN Chicago.
Well, I know one of your favorite pitchers, Nolan Ryan. He had that term, shutdown inning. We could use one right here, right?
This is it.
Big 4-run inning. Jimmy Rollins, 2-run homer, kind of blowing this thing wide open.
Well, you brought up the word chemistry. I've been in this game a long time, and chemistry today is more important than it has ever been, because the players have more leverage now than they have ever had with the money. in different years, in years past, different time zones. They had very little leverage. So when some coach or some manager came up and talked to you, you better respond. And you better try to do what they're telling you to do. And most of the time, thank goodness, it was right, as that's popped up high, pop up right side. So Hicks is retired. But when the coaches and the manager don't have a whole bunch of leverage, you better find a way to try to create some chemistry and a common bond so that these guys can get together, band together. And I talked about it as you did earlier, but after it happened, the situation in spring training, it could have given this club a common bond and banded them together.
I think the most important thing is you have to have your guys. And who are those guys? Those guys are the frontline guys. Jose Abreu, Chris Sale. If your guys, Todd Frazier, go about things the right way, it sets the tone for everybody else. When you're on the field in spring training and you're supposed to be on field at 10 o'clock with the pitchers, if Chris Sale's on the field at 10 o'clock, everything goes. When the team starts playing bad and you're looking for that leader, if that leader can be Chris Sale, make no bones about it. Every good team has to have that one position player and that one pitcher that carry the load. They have to have that guy. And Robert Ventura, coming from the manager, it's hard because you're talking about grown men that are making a lot of money. And I've always thought, boy, this is a quick inning.
Nobody can see it except Todd. Look at Alex. Meanwhile, a 1-2-3, and he leads it by 6.
Look forward to Miller time later in the game. Brought to you by Miller Lite. How about a nice 5-pitch inning there for Chris Sale?
Well, you called it the third, right? Needed it.
Woo!
Just to get.
We were having a conversation about chemistry and,
well, you know,
Jose Abreu and Todd Frazier, Jimmy Rollins.
It's gotten to the point today too that every club needs a leader, a Latin leader in their clubhouse, because the influx of Latin players is growing and growing. I think it's up to about 30% and growing each and every year. And we've got one in Jose Abreu. We've got he's a man. And when you have that, it makes it easier on the coaching staff, it makes it easier on the manager. And then you got Chris Sale, who has become really, I would say, between he and Todd Frazier, who's already jumped up into that category, those are the two leaders, which is great to have on a ball club. You got to have some leadership, and you got to have that common bond. that will to win. TWTW. Sox have not had TWTW for a couple of years. They've got it this year so far.
And another thing, it's a fun team to watch because when you watch the White Sox, you know, there's a reason right now they're 23-12, and we talked about it earlier. It's young legs. Melky Cabrera, Austin Jackson, Adam Eaton. They play with an enthusiasm. It's a fun team to watch play, and just think how good it's going to be when Jose Abreu really gets going and Todd Frazier, who's up now, really gets going, and the weather starts to heat up and the ball starts flying out of U.S. Cellular Field. If this pitching, what has surprised me the most about the White Sox in 2016 is how good the bullpen's been. And not just David Robertson, it's the pieces. Matt Albert's gone. Matt Alberts has gone in a really nice run. Now, I had a little hiccup in Arlington the other day, but that's going to happen.
Sure, it's going to happen.
You get enough games, it's going to happen.
That's lined in the left field. Gardner's there. So Todd is 0 for 1 with a couple of walks.
Hey, Northwest Indiana Sox fans. Friday, May 12th, when the Sox take on the Royals, the White Sox are offering specially priced tickets to Indiana residents and their families and their friends. To purchase tickets, whitesox.com/NWI. Sox fans, that's right at home for me.
It is.
Valparaiso, Indiana, right? Crown Point, Indiana.
There's strike one.
May 20th. I think I may have inadvertently said May 12th. May 20th, Northwest Indiana Sox fans night.
And that's into center field. Hicks. The one to left, the line drive to left, the fly ball to center. 2 down, and here comes Brett Laurie. Started off our scoring inning in the second, the 3-run second, with a double, and came around to score.
You've had a chance to watch this team now for 6 weeks. What has surprised you most in a positive way?
The defense.
The defense?
Yeah. That to me, baseball is a defensive game. Offense puts fannies in seats. Defense wins championships. You can't give the other team 30, 31 outs when you get 27 at the major league level because you're going to get beat. Last 2 years we've been giving teams 29, 30, 31, 32 outs, and we got beat. We got beat bad. This year that's not happening. We're getting more outs now than we're giving up. So that being the case, it's a game of pitching supported by catching the baseball. To me, there are 2 rules in baseball. I told you. First rule is catch the ball, and the next rule is don't mess with Joe West. The ball hit hard.
I tell you a guy that I've had a chance to watch the last year and a half, and he surprised me. He doesn't get enough credit. Jose Abreu is a really good first baseman.
He's very underrated.
Very.
He is terrific on pop-ups.
He reminds me, if you go back 5-6 years ago, where Albert Pujols was known mainly for his bat, but Albert Pujols was a really good defender at first base when he was with the Cardinals. And you watch Jose Abreu, for a big guy, he's very nimble around the bag, and as you touched on, not afraid to go in foul territory to get any pop-ups.
So 1-2-3 inning for Goody. We'll go to the bottom of the 4th. 7-1, good guys.
you by Travel Wisconsin. Plan your fun today at travelwisconsin.com. We're right back at it early tomorrow, Hawk. Noon, high noon.
I love it. Big Apple will not get the Hawkaroo tonight. So here we go with a 7-1 lead, bottom of the fourth. It'll be Teixeira. It'll be Headley and then Sanchez to face Chris Sale.
How about that last inning? 5-pitch third inning for Chris Sale, going into the fourth right where you want him. 31 pitches.
Teixeira hit a line drive, a hard line drive that Adam Eaton caught after making a good recovery. Took a little bit of a funky route to get there, but he got there. And there's the base hit. One thing about it, boys, let's put this lead in the bank and save it.
Hey, join us at U.S. Cellular Field as the White Sox take on the Kansas City Royals Saturday, June 11th. The first 20,000 fans will receive a White Sox Hawaiian shirt presented by Beggar's Pizza. Visit whitesox.com to purchase your tickets today.
Here's Headley. He homered. Got a fastball. Inner part. And did not miss it. Just off the corner.
Yeah, you see that's an experience of Chris Sale. First pitch, last at bat, ambushed him, started him off with that little changeup, that little batting practice fastball, 87 miles an hour. That little 87 makes 94 look 95, and that's what we were talking about earlier. The Chase Headley was able to get in his first at bat, that fastball enter third and down. Now you start this sequence. You see Teixeira off at first base. You make Headley aware of both sides of the plate. First pitch just off the plate, but then he beats him with a fastball.
2 balls and a strike. Outfield slightly to the right. Pops him up. Austin.
Well, that's a good pitch right there. I think there's so many reasons why that guy right there is so good, but he is not afraid at all to run the ball in on a right-hander, right? Home run into first at bat from Headley. He cuts this ball in, right? Just ties him up. Just lets him beat himself on that pitch that's in. Several keys to why this guy is so good, but to me it's both sides of the plate. He'll throw inside, he'll throw outside, he's up, down, in and out, and he's not afraid to pitch in, and he'll pitch in for strikes.
Slowly hit. So Sanchez is retired. 2 down. From what we've seen of Chris since he's been in a White Sox uniform, he's not afraid of anything.
What amazed me, I had a chance to sit down with him at spring training. We do the 30 teams in 30 days. And I asked him about that arm angle that he throws from. And he told me he was a conventional pitcher in high school, 3/4 over the top. And I asked him, why did you make the change? It couldn't get anybody out. And I found that hard to believe. A guy that has had this much success till he went to Florida Gulf Coast College was getting hit hard and had to make some changes. And what I find remarkable, I've been since 1986 watching big league baseball. I've seen 2 guys, Hawk, that have made an adjustment and an arm angle, drastic adjustment, and it's worked, and they've been able to maintain it. Chris Sale is one, Roy Halladay the other. Roy Halladay was 3/4 over the top, couldn't get anybody out. Blue Jays sent him down. Mel Queen, a minor league pitching instructor, worked with Roy Halladay on trying to create movement. The rest is history. And the same for Chris Sale. You look at him, he's not a very big guy. And a lot of people were scared at the draft. You know, is this kind of delivery going to last? He's answered that question. Now, how long is it going to last? Nobody knows. But I know this. He's figured it out. there were a lot of people that thought when the White Sox signed Chris Sale that he was going to be a bullpen guy. Short spurts, too skinny, wouldn't be able to take the beating to be an everyday 5-day starter. And he's proved everybody wrong. And that's why the beauty of the game of baseball, great players, great pitchers, they come in all different sizes, shapes. You could be big and strong like Roger Clemens. You could be slender build like Chris Sale. But he's figured it out. How you can make what works for you work and do it consistently, and he's figured that out. What he does, you can't teach.
Here's the 2-1 pitch.
He has
and
that
evens the count.
Now, that's what we talked about, right? He's 87, 89, slider, curveball, and then he gets it up there at 96. So now if you're Brett Gardner, you don't have – it's a very uncomfortable at bat because he could throw that big sweeping breaking ball. You have to be ready for 96. If you're not, he's going to throw it right by you. He's a nightmare, and he is a double nightmare for a left-hander.
Well, the only guy that we were talking about this morning in the studio that I can compare to Chris was when he first came up was Frank Tanana. Frank Tanana could run it up there 97, 98 with an unbelievable slider until he hurt his arm. Then, of course, he became a very soft tosser with a big curveball. But Tanana's arm angle was just about like Chris's. He gone. Brett didn't like the call, but he'll grab some bench. And we'll go to the 5th.
Profile is Avisail Garcia. Not too bad, Hawk. 400 over the last 12 games, 2 home runs, 4 walks, and 11 runs scored.
Everything is contagious in this game. You've heard me say that hundreds of times, whether it be positive or negative. And when Avi coming off that labrum problem in 14, and then all of a sudden the expectations of our club last year and him coming out, he tried to do too much and just got buried because nobody else was doing anything with the exception of Abreu. He's going to be fine. He is going to be just fine. He's still got to get that mirror to like him a little bit more. Right off the end of the bat. Breaking ball, and 1 pitch, 1 out.
Hey, join us for a children-only pregame autograph session. Fans that purchase this special packet can participate in an exclusive autograph session with a select member of the White Sox prior to select games. To purchase these special ticket packs, please visit whitesox.com/autographs.
Here's Alex Avila. Picked up his first RBI with that double in the left center field in the second. Then he singled in the third. Outfielder very deep. Big gap out there in right center. And that ball hit hard in the center field. Hicks got a good jump on it, broke back now, turns around to make the catch. So that's a hang wolf right there for Alex.
Boy, 3 pretty good at bats, though.
There it is.
The double, it was a bullet. Base hit, that was a bullet, and took Aaron Hicks right to the warning track, almost 400 feet straightaway center here at the big stadium in the Bronx.
Here's Austin. Jackson has walked twice.
As you touched on, amazing how one guy, and Austin Jackson being that guy, can change the complexion of your team defensively.
No
you move Adam Eaton into right field. What went from a very, I would say, suspect outfield in 2015. Now a ball's hit up in the air, and you feel like if it's in the air a long time, it's in a glove. It's going to be caught. And that guy right there, Adam Eaton, he has really, really turned himself into a super. He doesn't profile what they look like as a right fielder, but he's playing like a right fielder.
Well, nobody has been talking enough about this doubles that they're making singles right down the line, because Adam can throw, Melky can throw. They're getting there because they don't have to cover as much ground as before because of Austin Jackson, so they can play closer to the lines. The conceded double in the gaps is going to be there. There's nothing you can do about that. But what you can do, and it was illustrated by the first hitter in the bottom of the first in Minnesota. Brian Dozier hit that rocket right down in the left field corner, and it was a single. Pretty good rip by Austin. First of 3 here in New York. Jose Quintana against Ivan Nova tomorrow. On Sunday in the finale, Miguel Gonzalez, who really pitched well against Texas, against Masahiro Tanaka. Tomorrow's game, we'll be right back here on Comcast Sportsnet, and then on Sunday it'll be over WGN. Once again, the 2-2 pitch. Another good inning. That's 7 in a row retired by Goody.
Boy, there's a familiar voice, right? The Chuckmeister.
Yeah, it is. And he was live tonight. Usually, he's on tape.
Well, I'm going to date myself. You know who my favorite White Sox player was growing up? Bill Melton.
Oh, was he?
Oh, first game I ever went to, a big league game, 1970. Oakland A's, Chicago White Sox. Big Bill Melton fan.
He could hit.
The Oakland A's, Raleigh Fingers, Joe Rudy, Gene Tennis.
Raleigh Fingers. Boy, he was something. Romine. Raleigh Fingers was the reason I broke my leg. I dislocated my ankle. Playing him in spring training out in Mesa, where that field was just about as hard as O'Hare. And Alvin Dark had told us he wanted everybody sliding, so Max Alvis was at the plate. He had a ground ball down to Sal Bando, who goes over to Dick Green, and I was going to slide, and I said, no, it's too hard. By that time, I heard pow, pow. But the key was that Raleigh had me 0-2 and screwed around and walked me.
So blame Raleigh for that,
That's
right?
what I'm saying. All he had to do
Sprint
was,
training, right?
was go ahead and grab some bench off.
Oh, yeah, to blow it out of interstate in a spring training game.
He hadn't walked me. Romine, a line drive to center field. And a strikeout.
This is pretty easy work for Chris Sale right there. This is that big sweeping backdoor slurve. Not a true curveball and not a true slider, but this is outer third, catches that back part of the plate. There aren't too many lefties in baseball that can execute that pitch, but what makes that pitch so effective, he has that 95, 96 in his arsenal, so you have to cover both sides of the plate. You can't go up there looking for one half against this guy.
Well, that's
you can
always in the mind of the hitter, that 95 and that 96. And that's why it's so effective, is because you keep him thinking about it subconsciously and consciously.
It's so fun to watch him. To get through 4 innings tonight, 44 pitches, had a 5-pitch third inning. So that tells you right there, he's not afraid. That term now that we're hearing, pitch to contact. He's not afraid to pitch to contact. He keeps his pitch limit down.
That's
and he does so many. There's a prime example. 2 years ago, Chris Sale, when he would get to 2 strikes, it was just go ahead, I'm going to try to strike everybody out. But he's figured it out. In a lot of ways, this is another pretty bold statement. He reminds me a lot of a guy that I played with in Arizona towards the end of my career, Randy Johnson. All over the place, beginning of his career with the Seattle Mariners. Started to figure it out, and he figured it out in a big way with the Diamondbacks to help them in that World Series championship in 2000 over the Yankees. But the last 4 or 5 years, Randy Johnson became a pitcher and not a thrower, just like Chris Sale. Another easy 1, 2, 3 inning for Chris Sale.
Pitching to contact. And we're into the 6th, leading by 6. Cooperative Telephone Company in Wellman, Iowa. It's our half of the 6th inning. Top of the order. Adam Eaton has been hit by a pitch, has an infield single, and a 2-run double, also with a run scored. 7-7-0 for our guys, 1-4-0 for their guys.
If you're Joe Girardi, you have to be loving what you're getting out of Nick Goody. With a day game tomorrow, quick turnaround. Bullpen was emptied out in that series against the Royals Monday through Thursday. They really needed some innings out of Severino, but Nick Goody could be building a case for staying around for a while. He's actually pitched pretty well.
Well, he had retired up until that base hit by Adam. He retired everybody he's seen, 7 in a row.
There's a fastball outer third, hits it right back through. This is one of those right to the glove side. That's a tough one.
So here's Rollins. He's 1 for 3. He's 1 for 3, and that one hit was, if you missed it, in the 3rd inning.
It was a loud one, wasn't it? Trying to get a fastball by Jimmy Rollins. Kaboom. 2-run shot.
His 2nd homer of the season. He now has 7 knocked in.
Having played with Jimmy in Philadelphia, you're going to like him the longer this season goes on, Hawk, because he's a winning player. He's a winning player. He still has a lot of energy left. And I really think with this double play combination, Brett Lawrie has looked really good at second base. He will pay dividends when it gets into August and September. The games get hairy and they get dicey. You're going to see the best out of Jimmy Rollins. White Sox fans, don't let aches and pains keep you from doing the things you love to do. Schedule an appointment at any of our 340 facilities by visiting Athletico.com/appointments. Athletico.com/appointments. Athletico, the official physical therapy provider of the Chicago White Sox. Athletico, better for everybody.
Here's Abreu, 1 base hit. That was in the 2nd inning, knocking in 2 runs. Well, you know, I don't follow the National League that close. I never have. And then when we picked up Rollins, I went to Google and I started looking at his stats. And all of a sudden I'm saying to myself, what am I looking at here? I'm looking at a Hall of Fame player.
Kind of lost in the shuffle because with the Dodgers last year, that up-and-coming Corey Seager, their shortstop, exciting young player, and he's the future. And you know, there were a lot of people when Jimmy Rollins with the Dodgers last year thought he was in the way of Seager's progress, and I think Jimmy needed a change. Similar to Todd Frazier, I think Todd Frazier needed a change. Needed to get out of Cincinnati, get into a different environment, a winning environment, and to shake things up. And I think it's good for a player at certain points of the career when you get the tree shaken a little bit. I really do. I think you find out a lot about yourself. You have to get outside of your comfort zone. That organization for Todd Frazier was the Reds. You have to learn a different way about going about doing things. And when I spent the day in spring training with the White Sox, he looked generally happy to be part of the White Sox and where the White Sox were going. And I think that energy and that smile that he's brought with him, it's infectious. And I think he, along with Jimmy Rollins, have changed the way you look. I know when I walked into that clubhouse this afternoon before the game, it was much more upbeat than I was expecting. These guys are having fun. Now, granted, being in first place, it's a lot of fun, but there's a good vibe here right now.
Yeah, there is. And it's, you can know, absolutely, you know, not going to spring training, but I had my iPad, and you can learn. Actually, I felt like I knew more about the team just watching the games on my iPad because I could get more. I could get any plays I wanted to see. I could get the condensed down game, and I could. The only thing I couldn't get was watching the kids on the backfield, which is one of my favorite things to do. But the thing that kept jumping out of me as spring training, watching the games, was the attitude, the energy. You could see it, you could see it, and you could feel it.
And it's so easy. We had that shot there of Robin Ventura in the dugout. And I know he took a lot of heat last year towards the end of the year. They need to make a change. Is Robin too laid back? But I think when you bring in personalities like Rollins, who's been a winner, you bring in a guy like Todd Frazier, it's a new team, a new city, having to learn a whole new set of teammates. And I'm a firm believer, and I said this earlier, I'm going to say it again. I think if you're expecting a manager to be able to run the clubhouse, I think in today's day in baseball, a manager is better off just deflecting the media, taking the hit for some players, dealing with TV, with radio. But you have to have the guys inside the clubhouse. Todd Frazier, Jimmy Rollins, Jose Abreu. When you have quality people that do it right, it's infectious.
That's a high fly ball into fairly deep right field. So leadoff single, then he gets him, and we'll go to the bottom of the sixth, leading 6-1.
Pitching line brought to you by American Sale. Been pretty good. 53 pitches so far through 5 innings. See the big one, no walks, 4 strikeouts. One of the reasons, the many reasons why not only is he the best pitcher in the American League right now, but he's 7-0 and looking pretty good to win his 8th start.
Castro, Beltran, and Teixeira here in the Yankee half of the 6th inning. Castro has bounced back to Chris and going out to center. Outfield slightly to the right. Castro, a very, very talented player.
The one thing he's been able to do, Hawks, since he came up to the big leagues, as White Sox fan know from the other side of town with the Chicago Cubs, is he can hit. The problem with Starlin Castro is periodically finds himself checking out of games, not knowing how many outs, getting picked off. He, controversial, about a week ago, was picked off at second base in a tie game situation for the Yankees. There's never been any doubting what he could do with a bat. It's with the glove on his hand and in the bases, sometimes he gets a little bit lost.
Here you go. That's going to get a lot of them, Starling.
Makes it look awful easy, Chris Sale. That hard breaking ball down and in. It's what's gotten Chris Sale to the next level. He has that big sweeper, and then this one here, not quite as big a break, that down and in. It's funny, you watch him and that breaking ball that he throws right there. I think it's the closest thing we've seen as far as an angle. Reminds you of Randy Johnson. That low 3/4 arm delivery, a nightmare on lefties. And what has helped Chris is being able to command. His last 2 pitches almost looked like that 2-seam fastball, the changeup that he missed on consecutive pitches.
Well, throwing from that low arm angle, still getting the depth. That is what, to me, is amazing. Big gap in left center. Beltran has struck out and fouled out to Frazier.
There's a prime example. 3-0. Feathers a fastball in, 91 miles an hour. Then the next one, a little bit extra, 94. If you're Beltran right now, you know he's not afraid to throw a 3-2 breaking ball. You saw the last pitch he threw to Starlin Castro. So he has multiple options, even though it's 7-1.
High pop-up. Two down.
Hey, Sox fans, learn to play baseball the right way, straight from the pros. White Sox baseball camps are open to boys and girls ages 5 to 12 and will be in over 50 communities this summer. Call 630-PLAY-BALL or visit bullsoxacademy.com to find a camp near you.
Teixeira has lined out hard to Adam Eaton in right and singled in the hole between third and short. Yes, yes, no, yes, yes. Good play, good recovery right there by Brett. And that'll retire the side. That is 9 in a row retired by Sale. Local Wintrust Community Bank. Go to wintrust.com/Sox to learn more. Member FDIC. Pitching change for Goody. Goody, who did a terrific job. 3 1/3, 1 hit, no walks, 3 strikeouts.
It's the Midas call to the pen. Chasen Shreve, one of 3 left-handers Joe Girardi has out in the bullpen. The other 2, I think, we want to keep out of play tonight, right? Andrew Miller and Aroldis Chapman.
Just let them
Let's
stay
let them
right
get a
where
good
they're
night's
at.
sleep and worry about
That's
tomorrow.
it. Just let them stay right where they're at. I don't know if I have ever seen a bullpen with two left-handers of that ilk on the same club.
You've been around a lot longer than I have watching big league baseball.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm going to say this. The way their bullpen sets up, they being the Yankees, 7th, 8th, and 9th, Betances, Miller, Chapman, it has to be the best the game of baseball has ever seen in 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. Has to be. Because there hasn't been a lefty at the big league level that throws like Aroldis Chapman. He is by himself. He's a combination of Randy Johnson. He's a combination of every lefty you've seen. His fastball is the most explosive I've seen from a lefty since 1986 when I broke into the big leagues. Nobody from the left side has a fastball like he does.
Left side, Headley boots it, now controls, now throws, and they just do get him.
But the problem for the Yankees has been their starting pitching. Tonight's starter, Luis Severino, not able to get into the 3rd inning. CC Sabathia has been very shaky. Michael Pineda has fallen in love with his breaking ball. And if you're taking a look at Joe Girardi right now, and until the Yankees can get that starting pitching figured out, it's like having 3 really nice cars in the garage. You can't drive them, but a couple of days a week to get them work.
Here's Laurie. Well, this is Joe's in. When you get a situation like that in Joe's case, the one thing he's going to have to do, and it won't be talked about, it'll be an unsaid thing. People who know the game will obviously recognize it. He's got to know when to eat the games with that starting pitcher until he gets it in shape. That's becoming more and more prevalent around the big leagues because of the bullpen. Right now, in years past, it was not handling, it was handling the starters, handling the pitching. That was the biggest responsibility of the managers. Today, it's protecting that bullpen because you don't have guys going 7, 8, and 9 innings.
You know, that guy you're looking at right there, CC Sabathia, at one time when he came up with the Cleveland innings, there wasn't anybody better in the Central than CC Sabathia.
Oh, he was
and,
terrific.
and then that short little stint with the Brewers, he single-handedly carried the Brewers to a wild card. I mean, this guy took the whole Brewer team. I get it, Ryan Braun, a terrific player, but he's been battling injuries, CC, for the last 3 or 4 years. And getting back to Chris Sale, tying this all together, the problems that the Yankees have, think about what the White Sox went through Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You get in 3 shootouts back to back to back. Your bullpen's a little bit taxed, and yet you have a guy like Chris Sale. That's what's so important about having an ace. And if you're Robin Ventura, you're expecting just what you're getting tonight out of Chris Sale. Save the bullpen, right the ship, forget about that loss Wednesday, a tough day game loss. You get on a plane, you try to enjoy an off day and let that game go, but you feel confident because you have Chris Sale, and that's why a lot of teams think they have aces. But in my opinion, Hawk, there might be 10 true aces in all of baseball, and Chris Sale is one of them. Legitimate aces. If Chris Sale, you could put Chris Sale with, maybe you could make the exception with Jake Arrieta and Clayton Kershaw, but on 27 other clubs, he's their best pitcher. There's no doubt about it. He's that good right now.
Well, that's what they do. Their job is, they're not going to go that distance, so they got to protect that bullpen by giving them innings. That's why Mark Burley, in this new era that had started about 20, 25 years ago, it became a battle of bullpens, not a battle of starters, with the starters having to protect the bullpens. And Burley went 14 consecutive seasons with 200+ innings and only missed by an inning and a third, going 15 consecutive seasons of 200+ innings.
You show me a good bullpen, and 99 out of 100 times, the reason they're good, because the starting rotation is good. With the exception, last year, the Kansas City Royals didn't get a lot of innings out of their starting rotation, but that bullpen was so deep. But you show me a good bullpen top to bottom, and I'm going to show you a good starting rotation that has at least 2 guys that you count on to get the ball into the 7th inning.
Well, that was one of the reasons I was so excited about our club, is the way we were catching the ball. in the defense the way it had jumped up with the addition of Frazier and Austin Jackson. And behind the plate, Alex is terrific, as is Deandre Navarro. So our defense went straight up, and they have performed like that. We won games. I mean, we saw it happening out in Oakland. We won 2 games out in Oakland that normally we probably would have lost last season. Frazier made a couple plays out there that were just eye-popping, and continue. He didn't stop. He's doing it to right now. And I've seen Brett Laurie play a lot when he played against us with Toronto and Oakland. I really didn't realize just how much range he has at second. He's got a tremendous amount of range. There is Avi with ball 4. And here is Alex. He's had 3 good at-bats. RBI double, hard single, and a fly out deep to the track in center field. But you're not going anywhere in this game today with the way the parity is. You're not going to go anywhere unless you've got 2 things. Good pitching and good defense. Not in the American League. I don't know about the National League, but in the American League, you got to keep those guys from scoring runs.
We talked about this earlier when we were taking the bus in. I think the biggest change that I've even seen in the last 5 years is the amount of power arms that most teams, not all but most, it's 95 to 98 miles an hour from the right side, from the left side. It's a tough game right now. You really need to have that lead going into the 6th or 7th inning, because just about every team, now the Yankees are the exception. Nobody has Betances, Miller, and Chapman, but you could look across the board, and with the exception of 4 or 5 teams, you don't want to have to start to try to beat bullpens.
Well, it's a 6-inning game. That's what it's boiled down to.
And one team in the White Sox division, I think right now, if the Tigers would have had in the last 6 to 7 years a good bullpen, they probably would have won at least 1 World Series by now.
I don't disagree with that.
I mean, you're talking about when Justin Verlander was on top of his game with Max Scherzer, Doug Fister, and you went to the back of that bullpen. They thought they had that solution 2 years ago when they brought in Joe Nathan. That didn't work. They've gone to K-Rod this year. And when you have a good bullpen like the White Sox had in 2005, you really don't recognize it. But when you have a bad one, it sticks out and you can't get away from it.
You can't win.
Can't win.
2 balls, 2 strikes, 2 out.
I think the key to bullpens, you have to have a guy, and the White Sox have that guy in David Robertson. And somehow during the course of the season, somebody has to step up and be that alpha male in that bullpen that's going to be the go-to guy. The guy that you can give the ball to 1st and 3rd in the 8th inning with a 2-run lead and not have to bring David Robertson in. If you could find who that guy is, the troubleshooter, the guy that you can rely on when it really gets tough, if you can find that guy to help David Robertson out, that's the key.
That guy's Nate Jones.
And he's a good one. All the way back from surgery on that elbow.
Oh, yeah. Over to first, and that'll retire the side. 7th inning stretch. We lead it 7-1.
opening day. Live game, video highlights, StatCast, news, and more. Download MLB.com at bat, the #1 app for live baseball on your smartphone and tablet.
Bottom of the 7th inning. Chris with a 7-1 lead. Chris giving up the 1 run on 4 hits, no walks. That's 5 strikeouts.
Pretty economical,
his defense
right?
work for him.
6 innings, 64 pitches. 45 of those for strikes. Making a hot-hitting Yankee team 4-game series with the Royals. They started to turn it back around with the bats, and Chris Sale so far has quieted those bats.
Here's Headley. Got a fastball inside corner and hit it out of here, leading off the 2nd inning. Way out in front.
Pulled the string there, that little batting practice type fastball.
Way out in front on that change.
Remember the Orioles teams in the early 80s, Mike Boddicker, they had that fastball, they would call that, almost like a batting practice type of fastball.
Back at the fence. He's there.
It's what he does, changing speeds. He's become a pitcher and not a thrower. First pitch, 85 miles an hour. Had Headley out in front. That one, adding and subtracting. 91, just enough, gets the fly ball to Adam Eaton in right field. You'll see the average pitch speed for Chris on the night, 93 miles an hour with a fastball. The changeup at 86, and that slider at 79.
Sanchez a strikeout and a ground out to third.
It's so fun to watch when you see a guy like Chris when he's on top of his game like he is tonight. The one blemish, the Headley solo home run in the 2nd inning, commanding the strike zone. There's example, 1-1 breaking ball, gets it over. One at bat I think that stuck out for me. We go back to the last thing. Remember he fell behind Beltran 3-0. Comes back, strike 1, boom, strike 2, boom, pop up, gets the fly ball to right field.
I still think, as we talked about at the time, the most significant at bat was a home run by Headley.
Kind of a wake-up call, right?
Exactly.
Jump out to a 3-0 lead, right?
I mean, it ticked him off. He got that adrenaline flowing.
Just what you talked about earlier. He has that 95, 96. And if you're Sanchez right now, you see him getting a little jumpy in the box right there. Multiple ways to go if you're Chris Sale right now. You can elect to go ahead and try that, throw that 4-seam fastball. Might try to throw that big sweeper down at that back leg to try to get the strikeout.
Hard high or slow low, and that ball hit right at him. We got a man there. The youngster got a good pitch to hit and didn't miss it. Just a hang woofle. So that is 11 in a row retired by Chris. And here comes Brett Gardner. A little Kansas City special single and a strikeout.
You know, even in a game like this that seems like it's somewhat out of reach, 7-1, this is a guy you really want to get Gardner. Then you start the 8th inning with the bottom part of the order. Austin Romine and Torreyes just buries that, boom, 89. Just the change in speed, it's really fun to watch. You know that he has 95, 96 in that gun if he wants to unleash it. Up, down, in and out. There's the breaking ball. Right now, if you're Brett Gardner, you don't know what in the world's coming. Now, this could be the one that last at bat he struck him out on a good fastball, 92 miles an hour, that was cutting down and away. This is a rough seat right now if you're Brett Gardner.
You better believe it. He didn't bite at that one. Big gap, huge gap out there in right center. Melky short and left. And the captain of the outfield, Austin, well over towards Melky. That missed. So 2-2. Jimmy's got him. And that'll retire the side. Went to the 8th, still leading 7-1.
Hawk, don't let the secret out. Best kept secret in the American League. Jose Quintana, how about that? 4-0. Last 4 starts with an ERA under 1. 1-2 punch, pretty good. Chris Sale to Quintana, you have to feel pretty good about it.
Quintana has been something. He has been, at least I know in the last 30+ years, the hardest luck pitcher the White Sox have had. No question about it. He's approaching 60 no decisions in his young career. Had 17 2 years ago.
You know, when I watch him pitch, you know, I like the comparables, the comp guys.
Right.
He has a lot of, when I watch him, he reminds me of Johan Santana when he was really good. You know, not overpowering, not afraid to attack the strike zone, sneaky quick. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good his stuff is, because you're not 4-0 in your last handful of starts with an ERA under 1 if you're just flipping it up there.
No, he doesn't.
He's good stuff.
He has good stuff. And
it gets lost in the shuffle because a guy like tonight's starter, Chris Sale, your jaw drops when you watch Chris Sale.
Well, I've said it before, he probably knows how to pitch up better than anybody on our staff and one of the best in the American League. And there's an old saying, you show me a guy who knows how to pitch up and I'll show you a winner. It's when you pitch up.
Just this in, not good news if you're a fan of the Yankees. Tonight's starter, Luis Severino, who left the game with soreness in the back of his right elbow, having an MRI tonight. Not what the Yankees needed. More problems with their rotation.
Tommy John, their territory there. Here's the payoff pitch to Austin. And that is the 3rd time in this game he has walked. He's 0 for 1 with 3 walks.
Kirby Yates, bullpen phone a-ringing. There's Mike Harkey, bullpen coach, picking up the phone there. If you're Joe Torre right now, you certainly, you hate to empty out game 1 of a 3-game series, have to empty that bullpen out, but if he could stay away from the 3.
0-1 to Adam. Little chopper, 2-hopper. You can't do anything with it except get the lead man. But you know, you're talking about the guys saving something in their back pocket. In years past, that was commonplace. And the two teams that everybody used to hate to face the most because of that issue were the Baltimore Orioles and the Chicago White Sox. They had good pitching staffs, and they would save something for you. Those starters would save something for you. They'd save another 4, 5, 6 inches until you got to the 7th or 8th inning when you could hurdle. Then here it comes on a 2-strike pitch.
This is, I think, what Joe Girardi has to guard against, because when you have guys like Betances and Miller, you have to guard against not overusing those kind of guys. And it's an easy thing to do when you look out there and you can bring that big fella in, Betances and Andrew Miller.
That's trouble. Could be. No. He was playing him shallow. So 2 down. Well, again, that is prerequisite number 1 for managers today is guarding that bullpen, not blowing it out, not blowing it up. And as I mentioned, knowing when to eat games. And it's tough to do, especially in certain markets like this one. Abreu, big 2 RBI single in the second. He's 1 for 4. One of the best guys to manage in the American League in doing that was Piniella. Louis was really good at saving that bullpen.
You're one guy. I played for so many really good managers, but I always, for 18 years, been on some good teams, some bad teams, but I thought Jim Leyland could handle a bullpen as well as anybody in baseball. He knew when to kick you in the fanny. He knew when to give you a day off. He had some general rules that if he used you 3 days in a row, that 4th day, unless it was an absolute emergency, you weren't going to pitch that day. And that's the key. The key is trying to keep the guys out there in the bullpen that you're going to need. Matt Albers in August and September. You're going to need guys to go back-to-back days to pitch a couple days in a row, and you have a series like you have in this past series in Texas, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, when sometimes you have to outslug somebody, and somebody has to go ahead and eat up some innings.
That is high right field. Got room. And that'll do it. Got the leadoff man aboard with a walk. Can't do anything with it, but we still lead it by 6. It's the bottom of the 8th inning. Austin Romine to lead it off, the catcher. He has lined hard to center and he has struck out. 7-8-0 for our guys, 1-4-0 for their guys. First pitch strike.
Chris Sale's made it look really easy through 7 innings. Worried about the pitch count, which is the big thing in baseball today. 77 pitches going into this 8th inning. Make that pitch number 79 on cruise control. Fun to watch.
1 out. 13 in a row retired by Chris. And here is Ronald Torres. Twice he has gone out to right field, once hard. Never seen Torres spelled like that. Torres. In this case, Torres. As he takes ball 1.
It'll tell you what Joe Girardi and the Yankees think of Chris Sale. Their everyday shortstop, D.G. Gregorius. Very rarely does he get a night off facing lefties, but this just isn't any ordinary lefty that he's facing tonight.
Danny, I wish you could have seen, because there's a slurve strike. I wish you could have seen the first time Joe Mauer hit against him. I have never seen Joe Mauer look like that in my life. It was almost embarrassing. It was embarrassing. He did not go. Says Mike Luchentlinski. I talked to opposing hitters about our guys, our pitchers. And of course, everybody wants, all opposing hitters want to talk about Chris. Brett's got him. 2 down. Well, he's got a chance to do something that only 2 other guys have done since the mound was lowered in 1969. Tell them what it is.
Pretty exclusive company,
I guess.
Wow. He can join Pedro Martinez and Fernando Valenzuela as the only pitchers to win their first 8 starts with a sub-2 ERA since the mound was lowered in 1969. I'm going to steal one of yours. Mercy.
That is something. I tell you what, for 5 or 6 years, Pedro was as good as it got. He was as good as anybody for a 5 or 6 year period. Off the end of the bat.
And I think that the unique thing about Chris as you watch him tonight, the way he's pitching right now, you would think he's going to be able to sustain this for a while, because he is far from a maximum effort on every pitch. With the exception of a couple of hitters from the 3rd inning on, he's been in cruise control. He's like watching a guy. Look at this. It's filthy. It's just filthy. He makes it look too easy.
All right, we're into the 9th. Again, Dan Plesac, one of the greatest left-handed relievers in baseball, and myself for Game 2 of the series as Jose Quintana looks to continue his hot start and move to 6-1. Coverage begins at 11:30 with White Sox pregame live, presented by the Koalas family of dealerships on CSN. You know, I was looking at your bio the other day. I knew you were good. Damn, I didn't know you were that good. I mean, you.
I wasn't. I fooled him for a long time.
You were 18 years. You don't pitch 18 years in the big leagues unless you're something special.
You know what I'm most proud of? Never spent one day on the disabled list in 18 years.
That's amazing.
That's what I'm most proud of.
That is
I knew my value after my days of closing in the late 80s, early 90s with the Brewers. My value was not to pitch 2 days a week. I had to prove to every team, and I was always on a 1 year plus an option contract. So I knew the month of September, I better hunker down or there was going to be no next year.
Right.
So it kept me hungry. Now, granted, I wish I would have gotten a 5-year contract, but that wasn't the case.
Kirby Yates with that curveball misses. Yeah, well, you know, that's it. Ironically, that's one of my most proud things about my career was I was only on a deal one time, and that was when I broke my leg and my ankle.
We're going to blame Raleigh Fingers for that too,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. All that. I tell you, I've told him about it before too. Checks it up, takes a strike. Todd walked twice, lined hard to left, and flied to right. One down. I never forget the conversation we had one day in the dressing room in 1986 after a game. There was Fagosi, myself, Eddie Brinkman, some other 2 or 3 other coaches who were sitting around talking, and we were talking about how the deal was going up and up. Guys were starting to go on the deal more and more and more. So I asked him, I said, how many times have all of us cumulative been on the DL? I think there were 7 of us. 3, Doug Rader was there. There were 3 DLs among the 7 of us in our careers, and all 3 of them caused broken balls.
Well, it's a different game now today.
It's an agent's game.
It is, and in some ways, it's a better game. I really think that the players today, they're better conditioned.
They are.
They're better trained.
They are.
They're better athletically.
They are.
Because we have a generation of baseball players now that have already made a decision by the time they're 14 or 15, not only what sport they want to play, but what position they want to play. And I think it's a good thing. And from the pitching side, it's a bad thing, because I really believe in my heart that is the brunt of all the issues with the Tommy John surgeries. I really do. I think that we have such good coaching in youth baseball, travel teams, that it's becoming year-round, not just in Florida and Arizona. It's becoming year-round everywhere, and there's pressure on parents to have their sons not only play high school, but to play on travel teams and show teams. And we're so advanced teaching split fingers and sliders and curveballs, trying to get velocity. And the radar gun has been a good tool, but it's been a bad tool.
It's been a terrible
Because the
tool
first thing you measure
overall.
a pitcher now, you say,
right.
How hard does he throw? Now, we have a guy tonight that's about to go 8-0 and have a chance to join Pedro and Fernando Valenzuela. And if you were scouting this game tonight and watching Chris Sale, you'd say, well, he reached 95, 96 6 times. But he reached 95, 96 the 6 times he wanted to. Chris Sale could have thrown 95, 96, and he'd probably been out of this game in the 6th inning. But he's learned, he's pitching, and he's not throwing. And that's becoming a lost art.
Well, the youngsters pitching year-round is what disturbs me. They're just pitching too much. They're throwing too many innings. There's ball 4 to Melky. Melky now 0 for 4 with this walk. And you're getting, you know, I've said it for years, the worst draft pick you can have is a first-round high school pitcher. That's the worst draft pick you can have, because he's going to blow up. I mean, you can check it out. He's going to blow up. And when you get these youngsters pitching year-round, we got kids in high school who, during their seasons, are throwing more pitches in a week than major league pitchers. Because most of them, the good ones that you're going to sign, are throwing 2 times a week. And they're throwing as high as 150, 140 pitches every outing.
Give you a great story. Carlos Rodon, right now with the White Sox, right? Was signed, went to NC State. That's where I went to school. I actually had a chance to interview him a week before the draft. He was drafted by the Brewers out of high school, right? Was pitching in these showcase games, had some elbow problems towards the end. Brewers were a little scared to draft a guy, and he turned down a lot of money. Ellie Davent, the head baseball coach at NC State, told me this year, I was down in Raleigh for a long weekend, that they were surprised that he turned the Brewers down and went to college and turned himself into a first-round draft pick and fell right into the White Sox lap in a good move by both. And he's going to prove to be a difference maker in this White Sox rotation. And the best thing for him, if he's paying attention, is a night like tonight, if he's sitting in that dugout and he's watching the way Chris Sale goes about doing his work. It doesn't have to be 100 miles an hour. It doesn't have to be full throttle on every pitch.
He's got the best example right in front of him.
Right in front of him. And he watches him every 5th day. And he should watch what he does, talk to him as much as he can, watch the way he warms up, ask him to pick his brain about what he does on his side sessions in between. I mean, you're looking at Chris Sale. We're seeing a guy now that's the finished product. And I think you have to give the White Sox organization a tremendous amount of credit, because it's not by accident that they drafted him. And he's fulfilled his end of the bargain. But it goes back, and you're talking about Britt Burns, Rich Dotson. This is an organization that has developed Jack McDowell, some really good starting pitchers, rock solid starting pitchers.
Well, first of all, we've got one of the greatest pitching coaches, certainly in the last 40 or 50 years, in Don Cooper. And to me, he and Herm Schneider have been the 2 MVPs, so to speak, of our organization, because Don has fixed so many guys. He had Alex Fernandez, Wilson Alvarez, all these guys. And then Herm has kept them on the field, kept them healthy. So those 2 guys have been, just absolutely invaluable for the White Sox organization. As Avi can't get it. But when you get a good pitching coach, he's worth his weight in gold. When you get a good hitting coach, he's worth his weight in platinum.
And I think one of the positive things, if you're getting a look at, there's Herm there, Herm Schneider, it's so important in this day and age, and as fans, and you live and die so much with every win and every loss, that there has to be something about consistency in an organization. You look at the Atlanta Braves, what they went through with Bobby Cox for a long period of time, and there were a lot of people that thought last year Robert Ventura, and it's amazing how things can turn from one season to the next. And Don Cooper, if you have a philosophy and it works and you believe in it, if you could get the right kind of guys, the right kind of pitchers that buy into it and accept it, you can go a long way. It worked for Mark Burley. It worked for Jose Contreras. It works.
Well, we had, before this ball club was taken over by Reinsdorf, this ball club was in shambles. I mean, in shambles. And what he did was he brought what I call STP, not Andy Granatelli, STP, stability, tradition, and pride back into this thing. And that's what you have to have. And you look at most of the employees who work for the White Sox. There's 20 years there, there's 25 years there, there's 32 years, there's 34 over here, there's 40 over here. That is what he brought to us back to the White Sox, and that's why it's such a terrific organization. This is not the last time. That is a bullet. That a boy, Avi. In my opinion, this is certainly 05 is not the last time in the next few years that we're going to win a world championship. And I'll tell you what. To me, right now, the Cubs are a little better than we are, and I said that because they can put more points on the board. But this has got a chance, a realistic chance for the first time in a long time, that there could be a red line World Series.
I think if you're thinking about winning the whole thing, and you're thinking about winning a division like the White Sox are right now, you have to have a guy, and they have that guy in Chris Sale. You have to have that one guy every 5 days. White Sox just coming off a tough trip in Texas. They win the first game, get in a shootout games 2 and 3, have a long day off, and just what the doctor ordered. You've got your ace, and he's pitching like one tonight.
Well, we got two. We got two guys as
and
the
he's
Cubs
going
do.
tomorrow.
As the Cubs do. All right, bottom of the ninth, 7-1 White Sox.
Earlier in the game, it's Miller time. Brought to you by Miller Lite. And it's all things Chris Sale looking to make history. Been in control all the way. He's been what he's been all year, the best pitcher in the American League, trying to go to 8-0, and he's 3 outs away from getting there, Hawk.
He has worked the 8, 1 run, 4 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts. And he has got Castro, Beltran, and Teixeira to get out. First of 3, Jose Quintana tomorrow night. Miguel Gonzalez.
What was really fun to
on
watch
Sunday.
that the fans at home couldn't see between innings. Chris Sale sprinting out there to that mound. I think he wants this one. He is smelling a complete game. His body language, he's awfully impressive right now. There's no better way to put it or easier way to put it. He is right now the best pitcher in the American League.
That one at 93 upstairs to a good high fastball hitter. Starlin Castro. He's 0 for 3 tonight. Bounced back to Chris, going out to center and struck out.
That might be the best pitch he's going to see in this at bat too, Hawk. Take a look at this big sweeper right here. That's almost at that back foot, that right foot of Starlin Castro.
Pokes that one for a base hit. Good piece of hitting right there.
It was. After that hard sweeping breaking ball down back at the back foot. Doesn't try to do too much with it. Just kind of just put this ball back in play and soft serves it into right field.
Well, he's been swinging the bat well.
Good hitter.
And here is Beltran. That breaks a streak of 15 in a row retired by Chris.
There's the unsung hero in that bullpen, Nate Jones.
Oh, yeah.
He's another one of the best kept secrets right now in the American League.
I talks to some hitters about him. He'll tell you.
As we touched on earlier, you have the 9th inning. pretty much locked up with David Robertson. And if Nate Jones can be that guy, that troubleshooting guy to get the ball to David Robertson, that's a big bridge you have. If you can fill that bridge, every team, every bullpen needs to have that guy. And right now, Nate Jones is that guy for the White Sox.
Well, the right-handed hitters that I talked to that face Nate Jones feel the same way about him as left-handed hitters feel the same way about Chris.
Very uncomfortable at that.
Very uncomfortable. There's the strike. That was a great pickup by Kenny Williams. Jose Quintana. That ball into the gap. So now they're going to hold the runner at third as they get it back in.
Take a look at it here. This pitch intended to be down and away, cuts back in down that inner third of the plate, right where Mark Teixeira likes it. From that right side, he has that open up little bit of a bail swing. Unfortunate for Chris Sale. Melky Cabrera does a good job of getting this in with that 7-1 lead, holding the runners up.
Here's Headley. He's 1 for 3, a homer, leading off the second inning. That's lined into center field, and it's going to hang up as Austin gets to it, and no tag. So 2 down.
Talking about that White Sox defense, you're going to get a look at it right here in your home screen in your television. Austin Jackson, you talk about that closing speed. He does a really good job. Starlin Castro, you're down 6 runs. The last thing you want to do, you're not worried about scoring that run. You have to play safe right here. And well,
the play really good too was holding Castro to third base on that double by Teixeira. They get that ball back in a hurry. So here is Sanchez. Last time up, he hit a bullet right to Melky. Takes that slurve strike. All right. Jimmy's got him. Yes. And this ball game is over. So the Sox come in here. Chris Sale runs his record to 4-1 against the Yankees, to 8-0 on the season. And Danny, it was just an absolute joy to watch this man work tonight.
It was a clinic. You're taking a look at right now the best pitcher in the American League. Happy White Sox team. Take another look at that last out. Little fastball outer third. Pounded right into the ground to Jimmy Rollins, and just like that, Chris Sale 8-0. Not a bad way to start. Happy White Sox bunch, especially coming off that Tuesday, Wednesday road trip into Texas to come back and win this first.